Senator Barrasso.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks both for being here today. Mr. Hook, so the Trump administration pursued a maximum pressure campaign designed to choke off revenues that the Iranian regime used to fund terrorist activities. We now learned last week from the New York Times that a lot of oil has now been moving to Iran, from Iran to China. I think 59 million barrels worth over almost close to $3 billion. The tankers ended up in China. The money ended up in Iran. And Biden administration said they're doing everything they can. I think they've looked the other way and completely been outplayed. So the Biden administration decided to pursue what I describe as a maximum concession campaign as opposed to a maximum pressure campaign. And it was aimed at appeasing Iran, letting Iran do more and more. So we had the crippling sanctions from the Trump administration, Joe Biden lifting sanctions. Do you believe the Biden administration's approach to Iran has worked or has failed?
I think they relaxed enforcement in order to try to get back into the Iran nuclear deal. And I think that was probably a bad gamble because the Iran nuclear deal started to expire when I was in office. And it's going to keep expiring, in successive years. And so I know there was talk about a longer and stronger deal and a number of things like that, but they should not have relaxed their enforcement as a tactical negotiating matter. They would have been more likely to achieve their results by continuing maximum pressure than by relaxing it.
So along that line, and you use the word tactical negotiating approach, what lessons will other adversaries around the world learn about the U.S. in the light of Biden's concessions campaign toward Iran?
What happens in places like Iran is a teaching moment in places like North Korea and Venezuela and Cuba and other governments around the world. And so I think that if we show weakness and unnecessary concessions to the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, it has ripple effects around the world. It certainly, I think, could signal to somebody like President Xi after Afghanistan, after another war in the Middle East, that the United States doesn't have the stomach to do what is necessary to maintain deterrence. And so I would have much rather seen them continue the deterrence that when we came into office, it's clear from talking with our partners, with our Sunni Gulf partners, and with the Israelis, that we had lost deterrence against Iran, largely because of the Iran nuclear deal. It took a while to regain it. It's hard to restore deterrence. You can lose it very quickly. And so I think the Biden administration was in a great position to pursue its nuclear objectives, but they needed to continue the maximum pressure campaign.
So you mentioned President Xi by name, and there's talk of the concerns of perhaps China's involvement with an invasion at some point potentially of Taiwan. Does this also send a message that makes that more likely, that they'd view the weakness on behalf of the United States as an invitation for a time to go after something that they've been wanting for a long time?
In a similar way of not enforcing our red lines in Syria, it just sends the wrong message to tyrannical regimes, autocratic regimes that would like to displace us and our allies, whether that's in Asia, Europe, or the Middle East, or Africa. And so I think it's very important for the United States to be, as the old saying in the military goes, no better friend and no worse enemy.
So then following up on that, talk a little bit about the extent that the maximum pressure campaign previously actually worked, succeeded in achieving the stated objectives regarding Iran's nuclear program.
I think on the nuclear piece, it was the Iran nuclear deal was going to expire. And as I said earlier, we pulled forward the expiration date. And then we put in place what we thought were the standards for a new and better deal. I think if given more time, given the political and economic pressure we were putting on the regime, I think eventually we would have created an atmosphere to get a much better deal than was negotiated under the Iran nuclear deal.
So
I know for a fact that we dried up enormous amounts of funding for the Iranian regime and its proxies, and it worked.
Let me ask a final question. September 2023, the President's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said the Middle East region is quieter today than it had been in 2 decades. A few days later, we see Hamas terrorists, Iran-backed financially, coming in to Israel. How has the Biden administration's Iran strategy led to chaos and instability throughout the Middle East?
I think it would have been much better off for the administration to not delist the Houthis, to have better relations with our Sunni partners. It's very, when I was in office, we worked to organize not only our Sunni partners and Israel against the common threat of Iran, but we also did it in Europe and other parts of the world. And so I think when you come in to office and you alienate your Sunni partners and Israel, and you then relax your sanctions against Iran, that is exactly the kind of environment that Iran thrives in. And you need to be doing the opposite.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hook. I understand your family and you have all been subjected to threats because of the role that you have taken previously in the previous administration, your willingness to continue to speak out forcefully and truthfully. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.